Have you ever felt that nagging feeling of guilt whenever you choose to take a break? As if maybe somehow by stopping to rest means that you are not dedicated enough, that you haven't earned it, that you are not worthy of that time of rest. What if I told you that the secret to success and getting more done and doing it better is actually in the moments that you spend doing nothing at all? Today, I'm going to share various stories of my journey over the past 2 decades as an entrepreneur through various stages of burnout when I was able to restore balance back to my life, and how defining or actually redefining rest had actually transformed my life over the years. Stay tuned. This just might be the episode that you've been praying for.
Are you ready to take your message, your business, and your life to the next level?
Want to learn from someone with more than a decade of experience, training tens of thousands of people from all around the world?
Hi, Cliff. This is Pauline from Auckland, New Zealand.
John from Calgary, Alberta.
Amy Porterfield.
Michael Hyatt.
Dan here from Dunedin, New Zealand.
Ray Edwards. Mark Mason. Mike Stelzner.
Pat from Smart Passive Income.
It's Darren from Melbourne, Australia.
Now is the time to live the life of your dreams and do the work you feel most called to do in the world.
Welcome to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Here's your host, Cliff Ravenscraft.
Welcome back, my friend. I hope that you are intrigued by the opening to this episode. If you have ever felt guilt or shame for taking some time off or having a little bit more free time and margin in your calendar and or schedule, you're not alone. This is a conversation I have with many folks in my mastermind groups, my group coaching programs, my one-on-one clients. We talk about this a great deal. And I have had recurring bouts of burnout as a result of the old way of thinking, the old paradigm of thinking about taking a break, taking it easy, and how rest in my daily routine seemed to go against a lot of long-held beliefs that I'd picked up, adopted, and agreed with throughout my journey of life in the area of what it means to be a responsible husband and father and producer and creator, employee, business owner, all of these things. Before I get into it, I want to share a little personal glimpse into what's going on here in the Next Level studio. I happen to be recording this podcast episode on a Friday just before leaving for vacation. We leave tomorrow afternoon. My wife, myself, we're heading out tomorrow. Our children are going to be meeting us down in Tennessee. We have a place that my parents own on the lake down in Sevierville, Tennessee, called it's Lake Douglas. And it is the most serene and peaceful atmosphere you could possibly imagine. And of course, this is just outside of the Smoky Mountains National Park, which is about a 25-minute drive from our place where we stay down there. And it's only about an hour and a half or 2-hour drive to Asheville, North Carolina, and the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I bring all of this up because as I'm sitting here thinking about this, I am already just feeling the sense of peace that is available to me, because there have been many times I've gone down to this area to explore all the nature and just the scenery of these gorgeous, stunning mountains. And I had experienced such just a release of all of the expectations of what I need to do. And I just felt whole. I felt complete. And there have been some occasions that, by the way, I go down on vacation to this particular place quite a bit, but there have been some occasions where my trips to Tennessee, these week-long or 10-day trips to Tennessee, have not really produced the same level of peace. In fact, going on vacation at times in my past has produced a significant amount of anxiety, worry, questioning. Is this even the right thing for me to do given the current situation and circumstances that have happened in the business? There are things that need to be addressed here. Income has slowed to a new low over the last couple of years. Should I even be going on vacation? Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced this if you're an entrepreneur, but if you haven't, a little glimpse of things to come from time to time. There are ebbs and flows and all sorts of things in life, and business is certainly one of them. So there have been times when the idea of taking a break and going on vacation seems to produce anxiety, like somehow I haven't earned this, or this isn't the right time. And quite frankly, knowing what I do know now, in a season where I might be experiencing some significant, let's say, undesirable, inconvenient, unexpected situations and circumstances that may have had a significant impact on the consistent monthly recurring revenue of the business. And I feel this nudge inside of me to go into hyperactive mode to counteract the scenarios that have just happened. I should probably put a ton of extra hours in over here, and let's just take the weekend, and instead of doing that thing I was going to do the weekend, let me just go ahead and fill it in with some new projects. And if I do this thing and do this thing, and you know what? I know that I've been really good with my early morning workout or routine and devoting the first few hours of each day to this. But you know what? How about for this season, I just for the next few weeks, let's just say the next 6-8 weeks, I'm just going to go all in on that time. And you know what? How about we just put off vacation these are thoughts that I've had. And when I'm in those ways of thinking, knowing what I do know right now, the best thing that I could do is to take a break. The best thing that I could do is to get away, to get myself into a completely different environment. Ideally for me to get out and be in nature, to go to a place, an environment where things are massively slowed down. For me, I like to get out into the country. I like to go to a place where people talk even a little slower. And they move slower, and the pace is different. I like to go to a place that gets me out of my habitual way of doing life in a hypnotic rhythm that seems to be super fast-paced, ultra demanding, as if everything depends on me. Certainly, there have been times when situations and circumstances in the business may have come up as a result of things that I either did or neglected to do consistently in my business. And at some level, I think that might lead into some of the mindset about I haven't earned this. We wouldn't be in this position if I would have done this. And, and now I need to pay for that. And there's a lot of times in my life, in my past, where I gave into that line of thinking, that train of thought. But it always led me to a destination that I did not desire to go. See, I thought that train of thought was leading me towards this destination of digging myself out of this hole, getting things right back on track, and bringing back a consistent flow, bringing back certainty financially to, the projections ahead and all of these things. When in almost every single case where I've stayed on that train with that line of thinking, in almost every single case, it took me to the destination of burnout. Don't get me wrong, there were significant strides being made. New programs were introduced, new strategies were implemented, new actions were taken, and yes, results did come. But there are 3 words that go to one question that if I look back, I evaluate it in this way. At what cost? At what cost to my emotional health and well-being? At what cost to my spiritual health and well-being? At what cost to my physical health and well-being? At what cost to my overall well-being in life, relational well-being? At what cost? And when I look back in each of those scenarios, I could have benefited by just taking a break. Take a couple days off. Go for a walk in nature. Go hiking. Take a week off. Go have a personal retreat. By the way, there have been times when I've experienced setbacks in my business and I didn't even have a vacation or time away planned for me to cancel so that I could actually react instead of respond, react to the scenarios that have just, come up that were unexpected, undesirable, and inconvenient. But instead, there have been times when I actually had a scenario and I felt myself starting to react in a way that had led me to burnout before, when I actually said, you know what, Stephanie, I have a question for you. Do you want to go away for a week? And there was one time when Stephanie says, not really. And I'm like, why not? She goes, well, we just did this. We dropped one of our kids off at college, and I've got this trip coming up in a couple of weeks where we've got to go do this. And quite frankly, I don't want to leave the dog, and I don't want to do this. And it's like, I'd rather stay here, but you can go. And then I had to ask myself, wait a second. There's that thought. It's like, okay, first and foremost, have I earned a time away? Have I earned a week-long trip away from work and everything right now? There's already that fighting that's going on inside of me internally in my mind. However, to think, it's like, wait a second. So I've got all this scenario going on. I'm responsible for income flowing into our family. And now I'm going to go out and I'm just going to be all selfish, personal, just for me, and leave and take some time off and not focus on all this stuff right now and leave my wife behind with all the responsibilities of the house and the dog and all the other personal items that are going on here if we stay. And I'm going to go out for a week. And I'm like, I don't know that I could do that. And my wife says, why? And by the way, I love my wife. I have the best wife on this planet. She's like, Cliff, go. This will do you good. I will handle everything here. And you need this. Just go. This is what you need. And also, because you're going alone, you will have that freedom and that creative flow to just do anything and everything, and just go. You need this. You have my full blessing. She's not wanting anything in return. She's just like, just go and do this. And there was one time, it was several years ago, I went and had one of these personal retreats. And it was in the midst of a time when things were kind of tumultuous, when it came to some things that were shifting in my business. I don't know if you guys ever experienced this, but every now and then, every 5 to 7 years, sometimes it's about every 10 years, there seems to be a major shift, a major pivot that's necessary where things that I was focused on before either aren't working the way they were, or if they are, they're no longer as fulfilling as they once were, and I want to change things. And every scenario under the sun. However, it was one of these seasons where the future was unknown, and it was very uncomfortable to not know and be able to predict what the future financially was going to be. How can I go for rest? And except for the fact that I had done this enough times in the past to know that actually rest is the solution. So I went on that trip a couple years back all by myself. I went down to the lake house all by myself, had the place all to myself. It was incredible. There daily trips in the morning. I would get out the boat. My parents have a pontoon boat, and I would just take it, sit out in the middle of the lake, turn the engine off, and I would sit there with my e-reading device. It would Kindle at the time. I caught myself because those who listen to the Train with Cliff audio journal podcast know that I've actually decided to move away from Kindle devices, and now I'm using a new digital ebook device that's Android based. You can learn more about it over at trainwithcliff.com if you are interested in my behind the scenes look into the things that I'm sharing with the folks there. It's episode number 412 of the Train with Cliff audio journal, titled I Replaced My Kindle. Anyway, trainwithcliff.com. Little side promo there. Anyway, I would sit out there on the lake and I'd just be hearing the birds, I'd be hearing the wind, I'd be hearing the way that the waves from boats, the wake from other boats that were causing the boat to kind of bounce up and down a little bit. And just looking up at the sky, I would see sometimes the reflection of the mountains just right there on the surface of the lake. And I would go out there in the morning and just have that most peaceful experience. And then in the afternoon, I might take a drive and drive up through the mountains. One day, I actually took a drive to Asheville, Carolina, and went to the Biltmore Estate and just toured the Biltmore Estate by myself. It was incredible. And what happened and what came out of that, I think it was a 10-day trip. What came out of that was unbelievable creativity. New things that I had never thought of before all of a sudden just started to pop into my head. Clarity about exactly the next methods of doing things. At the time, I happened to have my portable audio recording devices. I had some Pelican cases with a Rodecaster Pro and a Heil PR40 and all this stuff so that I could take it down there just in case I felt inspired to create some content. And so I did this, and I'm like, I want to create content. And I had all of these different ideas. And at one point, I'm like, you know what? I think I want to start doing some series podcasts on niche topics. One of the things that came out of that was a podcast called Upgrade Your Peer Group, The Power of Mastermind Groups and the Mastermind Principle. And I created a URL, upgradeyourpeergroup.com. And there are only 6 episodes to that podcast. By the way, if you haven't listened to that podcast, it's free. Go out there right now. Upgradeyourpeergroup.com. Listen to all 6 of those episodes. If you're not in a mastermind group now, it will drastically transform your life in such a powerful way. But I created all of this content and all of these things, and that podcast alone has already generated $90,000 in sales from 6 episodes. And do you want to know how many times I've promoted that podcast? I've promoted that podcast with one email to my newsletter back a couple of years ago when it first launched. I promoted it here on this podcast and 2 other podcasts that I produce back when I launched it. I promoted it on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram one time on each of those platforms the week that I launched it. And this is the second time I think I'm mentioning that show here today, several years later. Yet that podcast, because I had the thought of, wow, there are people out there looking for this content, this topic. And if they found an episode of a podcast that spoke to the title and the description was compelling and it seemed to be exactly what they're looking for, and to see that it only has 6 episodes and the description says that that was intentional, it's not a pod-faded podcast, this is an evergreen podcast meant to sit here forever. It's almost like, this is for you. Listen to, and people are listening to. Thousands of people have found that. And it generated $90,000 in sales from the ones who said, wow, I've never heard of this Cliff Ravenscraft before, but I'd like to join his mastermind group by the end of the 6 episodes. And that would not have happened. And then that could be reproduced over and over again. And this is a strategy that I've taught other people. That's just one creative idea that came just because I had the freedom to just be creative. And it came because I gave myself time for rest and all of these other things. Now, I will tell you, there was another time that I was on a trip, and everything when I went on this vacation, it was great. I was so relaxed. I was like, man, life is wonderful. What an abundance season that I'm in. Everything seems to be going well. And I just feel so free right now. This is amazing. I'm enjoying my time with my wife. I'm enjoying my time with my kids and all this other stuff. And we were on a week-long vacation. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the week, hey, Cliff, do you got time for a quick chat? And what had happened was somebody who was in my Next Level Mastermind, who had been in my Next Level Mastermind for 5 years, reached out to me and said, hey, Cliff, I just want to let you know I am going to join this program that's specifically for lawyers. It's a very hefty financial investment. It also requires that I show up on meetings that are in direct conflict with our weekly meetings of the Next Level Mastermind. I just want you to know, he's been in the group for 5 years at that point. So he's like, I have to do this. And so because of that, I need to leave the Next Level Mastermind. Turns out that another lawyer who was also in our group, who joined about the same time as him, he'd been in the group about 5 years as well. And they actually met each other through the Next Level Mastermind. They became kind of like best friends. And they had both together been thinking about this program. And so later that afternoon, he called me and said the same exact thing. He's leaving. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, okay, there's that. And then I also, completely unrelated, had somebody else who was moving on. And they had let me know just while I was on. It's like all of this happened within a 24-hour period of time. And essentially what happened was 24, 36. So basically what I had anticipated, $36,000 of recurring revenue each year that had been there for many years consistently, where in my mind, I did not foresee or have any expectation that that was going to change. Relationships were absolutely strong. And yet within 24 hours, $36,000 worth of revenue that was anticipated over the next 12 months was no longer going to be there. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. What do I do? And the temptation on that trip was to say, well, I know I'm on vacation, but I should probably start thinking about this, and I should probably start something. I should probably get to work. And the temptation was there. And quite frankly, I went into a little bit of a emotional reaction to it for a little bit. And I had grown to that place where these kind of scenarios happen, from time to time, where I had probably got to the place where it's like, okay, I just got triggered into a negative emotion. I recognize that this is happening. And I had gotten to the place where the most that had lasted was about 2 or 3 hours. And in many cases, about 15 to 20 minutes. I figured I had this mastered. A little journaling, a little meditation, a little conversation, maybe with my wife or one of my mastermind members and friends. Just a quick reframe of how I'm perceiving this. Boom, I'm feeling good again. Yet on this particular vacation, I will tell you that a sinking feeling in my gut just weighed heavy on me for about 3 days while on vacation still. And I will say that I was able to bounce back before the vacation was over, but just before. And I didn't like that. And I will share with you that during that time, I felt a nagging sense of guilt for being on vacation, for doing things that were fun with my family, that somehow I'm not dedicated enough to my business to be focused on replacing this income right away. It's like, oh, what am I doing? However, what I have learned is that getting more done and doing it better is actually dependent upon the moments when I'm doing nothing at all. When I actually find a place to find the peace so that I can get back into the creative flow. See, when I go into reaction and I just want to take action, and I'm doing it from a state of anxiety, worry, and fear, my mind is focused on the problem that I want to solve. My mind is focused on what I want to get away from as far as an experience. But in that emotional state, there are things that happen in our brain waves that if we don't slow down the actual frequency of our brain waves, and if we don't get ourselves out of this fight or flight, this high range beta brainwave state, where we're in fight, what is you call that, survival mode, we cut ourselves off from the prefrontal cortex of our brain, which is where we have access to the creative flow state. It's where inspiration comes from. It's where we tune into the voice of God, or for some of you, it's where the ideas from the universe just seem to flow. It is amazing what can happen when we rest. So, I'm getting ready to go on vacation. And recently, I had a conversation about somebody else who was struggling to find rest. She's getting ready to go on vacation. And she's like, I also, she made some changes to her schedule. She's used to get up in the morning, go straight to work, and workouts were not a part of her daily routine in this season, in the most recent season of her life for the last couple of years. And in our one-on-one coaching session, she's like, hey, Cliff, I just want to let you know, about the same time you started getting up early in the morning again, going back to daily workouts, about exactly the same week, without even knowing, I've been following your journey online, but about the same time, I also started getting up. She goes, I get up at 5, and I spend those first few hours each day, I go to the gym, get a workout in, and all this other stuff. But I got to tell you, sometimes there's this nagging feeling of guilt that maybe I should be using that time in the morning to do work. And then she talked about the fact that something had happened with family. There was a situation that arose, and it's like, okay, now I'm going to have to work in the evening. And the thought was, it's like, oh man, would I actually be working in the evening if I wouldn't have gone to the gym in the morning? Maybe, and she was acknowledging, she was aware that there was a thought in her head that says, maybe you should just get up in the morning and start doing this work again and stuff like that. And maybe at the end of the day, if there's still enough time and you still feel like it, then you could go to the gym. And it's almost as though when you've earned it. Now, she was aware of all of this. My coaching client is a coach herself. She was able to process it, but it was a conversation, and we also were talking about the fact that she's a solopreneur, and she's getting ready to go on 2 weeks of vacation during the month of July, and her 25th wedding anniversary is going to be in September, so they're going away for 2 weeks for that. And she's like, it's like there's a lot of rest happening in my life, and I've put myself in a position where I'm able to go into the gym and have these first few hours devoted to my self-care, to my own personal well-being. And I actually have worked and trained somebody so that they can do a lot of the tasks while I'm away. So all I have to do while I'm on vacation is just to check in and see how things are going and maybe be there in case something falls apart. So, and if you are an entrepreneur, especially if you're a solopreneur or have a very small team, you know exactly what we're talking about here, right? So we were talking about rest. And rest is something that's very important to me. It is something that I have learned to make an incredible priority in my life. And I've needed to for so many reasons, but most of all because I learned of the value of it. Okay, so I've been chatting approximately 30 minutes or so. Another thing that I'm just going to randomly drop here in the middle of the episode, and that is today I am not recording a video version of this podcast episode. So if you were to go back and look at episode number 734, the title of the episode is it worth having a video version of your audio podcast? And by the end of that episode, I decided that, yes, it is worth it for me in spite of all of the obstacles and all of the issues that are associated with it. However, I chose not to turn the recorder of the video on today. And I chose not to do it because I knew the number of extra hours, even though I had gotten to the place of like, listen, this video content or the content that I'm sharing in the Cliff Ravenscraft show does not have to actually be at a whole workshop session level kind of educational piece of content. They can be sometimes, but they don't have to be. And if I am going to do that for this podcast and then also create a video version of it and put slides together, I had already shared, I think I said it's somewhere around 15 hours for an episode. Whereas episode 734 was a behind the scenes, it was still the actual video version of it still added another hour and a half to 2 hours, maybe even 2.5 hours when it came to all of the post-production of the video on top of the audio and then also the sharing of it. And there's certain reasons for that I'm not going to go into today. However, what I will say is that while I have allotted time over the last week and a half to create content for this episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show, I've not allotted enough time for the video side of it. And then I'm like, okay, well, fair enough. I'm going to create a version of this podcast that's audio only for this episode and maybe even the next one. And maybe even many of them so that I can just get back into the way that I usually do content. In spite of the fact that there's not going to be a video version and I won't benefit from all of the reasons why there's benefit to have video versions of it. So I wanted to just share that with you as an update from last week's episode. Now, what I want to also share with you as a behind the scenes here of what's going on and what I'm going to do, staying on this topic of rest. There is so much content within me. And if I get rid of the video recording, the video editing, the video post-processing, the video of it being up, available on YouTube and over here and all this other stuff, all of the video, if I get rid of all of the video, if all I were to do was to come into my studio, sit in front of this microphone, hit the record button, the amount of content that I could create is mind-numbing. I have so many different ideas for ways to come up with content. I have read hundreds of books. I have thousands of highlights from books. And one of the things that I could do here is like pick a topic and then choose a handful of books on that topic and then go find some quotes and just read the quotes and share off the top of my head thoughts on them. And that's exactly what I'm doing in this episode. And by the way, I have thoughts on all sorts of other things I could do to create content, which is to go back into the archives from 10 years ago, find something that I taught back then, and then potentially either pull quotes from it and read what I said, or even pull the actual audio and play little snippets of what I said 10 years ago, and then share with you my thoughts on what do I think about what I said 10 years ago today. Has anything shifted for me? There's so much. It's unceasing the amount of flow of ideas of content that I could come to you with. And I will tell you that just a little private observation that I want to share is that this podcast today would not have been recorded before I leave on this vacation if I would have held myself to the standard that I must have a video element of this podcast episode. The fact that there's no video of this being recorded right now means that there's no pressure at all for me to potentially edit it and make use of it. And in some way, how does that, this just occurred to me, this relates. In some way, I've given myself rest from the work of the video element of this podcast. And I feel great behind this microphone. But I do know that there's so much that video could have done. There are hundreds and eventually maybe even thousands of people. And if things were super optimized with algorithms and it was written in a certain way and it had all this other stuff, potentially tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people might be reached by what I'm sharing. But you know what they wouldn't be reached by? The content that I don't create. So that's why I'm here. Okay, so the whole idea is that I've been wanting to record an episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. I have made a commitment that I want to be back on a weekly basis from this point forward. It is a desire of mine. I have noticed that my episodes are not exactly, within 7 days apart from each other. I'm working on navigating this, and most everything that I've been experiencing as far as a delay is concerned is my desire to also have that video element. And I'm working out still in my mind how I feel about that. With that being said, finally I said, okay, no video for this episode. Done. All right. I was going to record this episode on Monday. I was going to record it in the morning. And I got a little distracted. I had a scenario where one of the things that was on my to-do list was to check to see if our Anthem insurance payment was going to come out just the way that it was supposed to. We had made some changes to our health insurance policy, taking our oldest daughter off back in April. She's married now, and her husband just got a promotion at work, and they've got health insurance. And so all of these different things. And there was a shift in the amount of payment, and we made a payment, and all of a sudden we got a notice that the payment didn't come out on time. And our auto pay didn't go out. So I went in and manually made a payment. And once I manually made the payment, I set it back up on auto pay again. And then I went in Monday morning and I noticed that it is set up for auto pay. It's scheduled to come out July 1st. And the price went back to what it was before I took my oldest daughter off. And I was on the phone for 4.5 hours with 9 different people before we potentially got it solved. That if I look back to that right now, did that need to be done on Monday morning? The answer is no. One of the things that I do know about myself is that the first few hours of my day are my creative time. If I'm going to really tap into that creativity, that inspiration flow state, those first few hours are really the source of everlasting life energy or whatever. It's like tap in the morning. This is here. Take as much as you want. Whereas in the afternoon, I'm like, And also, by the way, on Monday, I was still, am I going to do this video? It was still a question in my mind. So anyway, long story short, that I didn't record on Monday. I'm like, I want to record something. So what I'm giving you is behind the scenes as how did this episode come into being? Well, when I came, by the way, I woke up today, Friday, June 28th, 2024, and I knew for a fact I am recording this podcast episode. I knew today when I woke up, there would be no video version of this podcast episode. I also had no clue what topic I was going to do for this episode. So this morning, my wife asked me if I would run to the store for her, and I went out for some breakfast, and I thought to myself, okay, I have an unceasing amount of potential content. What do I want to do? Well, I'm going on vacation, and I plan to have no scheduled calls whatsoever. I have no client appointments. I have no meetings. Even my group coaching programs and my Next Level Mastermind, I explained it's a holiday. We're on vacation, taking the week off. A lot of other people were going to be absent because of the holiday as well. And everybody was perfectly fine. So a completely free schedule. And I just had a conversation with my client who is going on for vacation in 2 weeks. And we were just talking about her feeling a little guilty about spending the hours in the morning, having all of this free time to herself, and also thought about this. And I'm like, rest. And I was recently reading a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And it is titled How to Relax. My wife saw this show up in the Kindle library because we had it set up to where she had, when I buy a book or get a book in the Kindle app or whatever, she sees it on her iPad and she goes, how to relax? You really need a book on that? And by the way, that tells me that I've made massive progress in this area. Because my wife is actually saying, do you really need a book on how to relax? You're probably one of the most relaxed people I know. And this is over the last several years. It's been something that I have made a very real part of my practice, is relaxing, having rest. But it's like, anyway, so this book, Thich Nhat Hanh. Here's one quote. So what I did is like, okay, I am going to talk about rest. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find some quotes from 2 different books. I don't know how much of Thich Nhat Hanh I'm going to bring here because it's very much every little tiny quote is about a mindfulness practice, and it's about focus on your breath and things like that. And I like it. I love it. But there was this one quote that I think would be really great for me to include in here. And then because I use a program called Readwise, every highlight of every Kindle book that I make is synced up with Readwise, which puts it in a database in my Notion account. And so I remember reading a book, I actually did not finish it yet. I might actually finish it while I'm on vacation, called Rest: Why You Get More Done When You Work Less, by Alex Soo-Young Kim Pang. And I'm not sure if I'm actually saying his name correctly, but that's the book. I'll put links to all of this in the show notes. So what I decided to do in what some of my thought was is, I could create so much content for the Cliff Ravenscraft Show and for other podcasts simply by letting a single quote or multiple quotes from a book, from a YouTube video, from an email newsletter, read the quote and or quotes, and then just share my commentary on it, share my thoughts on it, share my experiences with the topic. And I'm like, yeah, tell some stories. And I could do it in a number of different ways. I could outline it and think about, okay, here are 4 tips to such and such and such and such. Or I could do what I've done in this episode, which is the completely completely free flow, and just share with you everything that I'm actually thinking in the moment. The only thing that I did was I took all of the quotes that I'm going to read for you here in the latter 15 minutes of this episode, and I put it into ChatGPT, and I said, hey, I'm going to be sharing these quotes in a podcast episode. I'd like for you to, number 1, ask me some questions that might probe my thoughts and get my thinking, because I want to share my experience on this topic. And so it gave me some questions. I said, what are some potential action items that I could suggest for my audience that would be helpful takeaways from this? And then I did ask it for, hey, could you give me a compelling hook that I could actually say at the open of the episode? And I kind of paraphrased that before you heard the jingle in this episode. That's how this episode came into being. So, with all of that being said, I'd like to now share with you some quotes, share my thoughts, maybe get to some of those questions that I had prompted from GPT, and some action items, and a closing quote. All right, so here's the first quote that I want to share with you. By the way, all of these quotes that I'm going to share here are from the book Rest, Why You Get More Done When You Work Less, until I tell you that it's another book. So the first quote is, when we define ourselves by our work, by our dedication and effectiveness, and willingness to go the extra mile, then it's easy to see rest as the negation of all of those things. If your work is yourself, when you cease to work, you cease to exist. Now, when I was reading this book the first time and I saw that, I highlighted that. I then took the book over to my desk. I opened up my journal, which I was doing handwriting journaling at the time, and I transcribed that quote into my journal. I then closed the book and proceeded to journal for the next hour or two, because this is something that I have done at a very deep level in the past, and I am quite aware that I have a tendency to lean back towards identifying myself with my work, identifying my feeling of value and worthiness to the work, or even sometimes the results of my work, and or sometimes the levels of income that are produced from my work. But at any level, it seems like, wow, when it comes to our work, we should absolutely have an absolute dedication, right? We should be dedicated to our effectiveness, and we should have a willingness to always go the extra mile. That should be like ingrained in our innermost being. The only thing is, though, is that if we define ourselves by that, now I think it is absolutely possible to have a level of dedication and effectiveness and a willingness to go to the extra mile and have that be a natural part of the way we do work. The problem here isn't those things. The problem is if we attach our emotional well-being, how we feel about ourselves, to our results and or consistency of doing those things, then all of a sudden, anytime that we're not doing those things, then all of a sudden the definition of who we are gets a little cloudy. Who am I if I'm not fully dedicated to this work? Who am I if I'm not effective in everything that I'm doing? Who am I if I'm not willing to go the extra mile right now? Who am I if I'm not hustling to make things happen? Who am I if I'm not doing all of these things? I don't have time to rest. I can't. This has been a huge mistake. Devoting the first few hours of my day to working out and meditation and stuff like that. I can't go on vacation when things are like this. I mean, I should be dedicated over here to make things happen. If everything was happening and the results were fluid and there was a steady flow and certainty looks great over the forecast of the next several weeks and next several months, then maybe I've earned it. And I could go feeling good about myself. But if we define ourselves by our work and our dedication and effectiveness, and effectiveness is the results, and the willingness to go that extra mile, to bend over backwards and take all of our margin and fill it up with lots of more appointments for a ton of extra people, then all of a sudden, it's easy to see that the negation of all of that is this thing called rest. Too much rest, too much margin. And that's the conversation I was having with my client. I feel like gosh, should I have this much margin in my life? And there really is a question, it's like, am I taking my foot off the gas pedal? Am I being a little, Pollyanna about how great things are? This seems dangerous almost. So that's the first thing. Your work, if your work is yourself, when you cease to work, you cease to exist. Now, there are some things we could talk about from a psychological process, and what is the function of the ego. And the ego is the identity that we put together. It's the mask that we wear that kind of has all of these label of beliefs. This is who we are to other people. This is how we show up and interface with each other. And one of the roles of the ego is to keep us safe. And quite literally, unless we change the way we think, unless we sit down with the ego and have a little team meeting and say, hey, we've changed what we believe about rest. We've changed what we believe about what is the appropriate level of margin in life. We've changed what we believe about our priorities. Unless we sit down and actually work this stuff out internally, unless we do the internal work, then rest will be seen by the ego as an existential crisis. It is a crisis of identity. I don't know who I am if I don't work. I don't know who I'm afraid that I'm going to die. And quite literally, in many people's cases, when they rest, they are dying. Their persona is dying. What they believe is falling apart. And the consistent, ongoing commitment to work and going the extra mile and the hustle and all of those beliefs that the harder you work, the more valuable you are and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden the idea is like, well, I'm a valuable person. I am a successful person. I'm a this person. I'm a that person. And I get all those things by doing all of these things and these things. And right now there's not this. And if I rest, then I'm not that. And if I'm not that, then who am I? It's an existential crisis. Anyway, so I love that quote. Coming from the same book, here is another quote. The ancient Greeks saw rest as a great gift, as the pinnacle of civilized life. The Roman Stoics argued that you cannot have a good life without good work. Indeed, virtually every ancient society recognized that both work and rest were necessary for a good life. One provided the means to live, the other gave meaning to life. Today, we've lost touch with that wisdom, and our lives are poorer and less fulfilling as a result. Well, I will tell you that those who have had this work ethic, succeed, these people are living seemingly a less fulfilling life. Now, they may not be aware of it when they're in the midst of the work, in the midst of the results. I happen to have a handful of clients that I consider to be what I call elite entrepreneurs. If you're new to this content that I'm creating and new to who I am, I work with aspiring entrepreneurs who want to create life on their own terms through some sort of business, whether it be online or any other self-employed, not leaving the lifetime of an employee behind. So aspiring entrepreneurs. I work with early stage entrepreneurs who have actually dipped their toes in the water and they're ready to go full-time self-employed, and or they've already gone full-time self-employed, but they're still in the early stages and things are still shaky. It's those first few years. I work with what I call to established entrepreneurs. I call them next level entrepreneurs. These are the ones who are consistently making ends meet. They've got their message down. They know who their audience is. They've got great products and services. Recurring revenue is starting to happen, and they're ready to take it to the next level. They're consistently wanting to grow and expand, not just the size of their business, but also the quality of their work and the quality of their life. So I work with established or next level entrepreneurs. And then I work with what I call elite entrepreneurs. Elite entrepreneurs are those who have been in the business world for 20, 30 plus years. And right now I'm working with 3 different clients who had started their own business, did it for more than 20 years, and sold that business for millions of dollars in revenue. 2 of those 3 clients never have to work another day in their life as far as for financial income. And 2 of those clients are currently having an identity crisis. Their life is filled with nothing but margin. Yet the relationship with the spouse isn't maybe what they had hoped after all of these years. The relationship with their kids isn't what they had hoped it would be. And also the fact is that while they're incredibly wealthy and have all of this freedom to go do all sorts of things, they find their life is kind of lonely because they don't have anybody to share it with. And they feel somewhat unfulfilled. And yet they've achieved the dream that they set out to achieve so many years ago. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to make it ultra successful. I'm going to save, invest. I'm going to retire early, and I'm going to go and do all of this amazing stuff. Well, they've got to this place, but all the amazing stuff, there's the ability to do those things, but there's a void and a vacuum of people to do them with. And so there's all of this stuff that's coming up. And who am I if I don't own a business now? Who am I if I don't get up and go do work? And they're like, I just want to go do something. I want to create something. I've got to find out who, and they're struggling to find out who I am. Who am I? Who am I? And so, yeah, there is something to be said for having a balance of something to do for work. And so for me, I ask myself, do I actually ever want to retire and just not have work? I could say, gosh, do I ever want to be in a position where I don't have to work and I have all the money I ever need? Sure, I don't know that I'd ever stop working. But I definitely want to make sure that I'm always resting. I want to make sure I'm always experiencing rest. All right. The next quote from this book. Rest is not something that the world gives us. It's never been a gift. Oh, by the way, isn't that funny? Because the last one is same book, by the way, but it says the ancient Greeks saw it as a great gift. Let's see here. The ancient Greek, saw rest. That's hilarious that the same book is actually saying this. So the next quote, rest is not something that the world gives. It's never been a gift. Actually, I see what it's saying here. So in a way, it says the ancient Greeks saw rest as a great gift. However, it's saying the world we live in today, the modern world, it's saying today, this world is not something, the rest is not something that the world is going to give us. It's not a gift that the world is giving. All right, that's what it says. Although it does say it's never been a gift. And as I'm trying to figure out the discrepancy between the two lines, I don't think there's a discrepancy there. So the ancient Greeks actually are the ones who perceived it as a gift. I doubt that the ancient Greeks received it as a gift from their world either. So that's how I think these two quotes are congruent. But anyway, let me finish the quote. I'll start it over without me breaking it up into this dialogue there. Rest is not something that the world gives us. It's never been a gift. It's never been something you do when you finished everything else. If you want rest, you have to take it. You have to resist the lure of busyness. Make time for rest. Take it seriously and protect it from a world that is intent on stealing it. Do you see why I want to come and share these quotes with you? So many of you have not read this book called Rest by Alex Soo-Young Kim Pang. And again, the book is titled Rest, Why You Get More Done When You Work Less. There's by the way, a quote, I can't remember. It might have been from Abraham Hicks. And it was a quote that literally said this. Let's see here. The more I rest, the more I receive. And I will say that is absolutely true in my life. And it's why I'm such a supporter of this message of rest. It's why this is so compelling for me to create this content for you. And it's why here at 1 hour and 2 minutes into this thing, you're still listening. I think it's been 1 hour and 2 minutes. Anyway, I can't remember if I waited a few minutes before starting to talk for the episode, but it doesn't matter. So here's the thing. Rest is not ever been anything that you do when you finished everything else. If you're waiting to rest until you finish everything else, you might as well just put rest off until you die, because that's going to be your rest. The truth is as long as you're here on this earth, you're never going to be finished with everything else. You will never be finished with everything else. I'm going to say it one more time. You will never be finished with everything else. In fact, when you die, there will be things left unfinished. And you're still going to take that rest as well. So, if you want rest, you have to take it. And you don't have to wait until you die. If you want rest, I love this, you have to resist the temptation, the lure, the seduction of busyness. That busyness is that ego saying, hey, feel good about yourself by doing these things, working tirelessly, pouring out sacrifice, serve everyone at the highest level, go the extra mile. All of this busyness makes the ego feel good. It boosts our pride in what we do. It makes us feel worthy, makes us feel valuable, makes us feel significant. Sometimes we even receive praise from others if we are busy. But I will tell you right now, It is a temptation that is attempting to steal from you. It is stealing from you the opportunity for rest, for getting even more done, from being even more productive, for being even more creative, and for getting clarity about what is actually even the right thing to do. All right, next quote, same book. Restorative daytime naps, insight generating long walks, vigorous exercise, and lengthy vacations are not unproductive interruptions. They help creative people do their work. This is absolute pure truth in my life. I take a restorative nap almost every single day. Probably never less than 4 days a week. Almost always 7 days a week. And when I say I take a restorative daytime nap, those can be power naps like 20, 30 minutes. However, if my current routine Mondays through Fridays, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I usually have that first 4 to 5 hours of just that creative time for reading, studying, reflecting, growing. And then I will sometimes take an hour-long nap, maybe even 90-minute nap if I actually didn't get a full 6 or 7 hours of sleep. So then I'll take a nap, and then I'll get up from my nap, and then I drive to the gym. I'm gone for another 2 hours, getting a vigorous exercise, seeing the scenery on the road, seeing the sunshine and the clouds, and sometimes it's just seeing the clouds and I don't see the sunshine, but I'm out and I see other people and I smile. And then guess what I do after I work out? I eat lunch. I take time to eat lunch and just sit back and relax and enjoy my food. And then I come back and I typically will do another 4 hours of work. 4 hours in the morning, lots of rest. 4 hours in the afternoon. And typically, I sometimes only need one of those 4-hour blocks. I don't need both. I love it. I love daily restorative naps, insight generating walks. Sometimes I will get an unexpected, undesirable, inconvenient situation or circumstance that pops up. I immediately notice I don't like this. I am aware that there is some feeling of uneasiness about this. And I'm like, you know what? I'm recognizing a desire to immediately jump into reaction mode. I know that's not what I want to do. I recognize that I'm distracted from what I might otherwise do right now. And so I'm not in the best state to do that. And I don't want to react right now. So sometimes the best thing for me to do is to go upstairs and say, hey, Steph, do you want to go for a walk? And sometimes she says yes. And we go for a long walk together and we chat about what I just discovered. Sometimes she's like, I'm not available right now. I'm getting ready to go do this. And I say, okay, hey, I hope you don't mind. I'm heading out. I'm going to go for a walk. And she goes, understood. But the thing is I love walks. I sometimes take these walks several days a week. I'll just go for a walk to think things through. I love it. Vigorous exercise from November 2014 until the pandemics closed down the gym in 2020. For 6 years of my life, I did vigorous exercise 6 to 7 days a week, every week, without fail. With rare occasion on travel days for conferences, and there were 2 or 3 times I had some sort of illness like a bronchitis or something like that, and the doctor said, listen, give it 4 days. So, but still, that was such a part of my life. Now, transparently, authentically, from the pandemic all the way up until about 2.5 months ago, I kind of lost my focus on that and focused on some other things. Some great things, but to the detriment of my vigorous exercise. Well, several months ago, about 2.5 months ago, I started getting up at 4 a.m. every morning. That first few hours of each day started to give me a great deal more clarity about what's going on in my life, a lot of more self-reflection. And for the last 2.5 months, I've been doing 6 days a week, actually now 7 days a week for the last month, vigorous exercise. Actually, I do vigorous exercise Monday through Friday. I go for long walks on Saturday and Sunday. So anyway, vigorous exercise, it's amazing. So much creativity comes to me when I go on and I'm at the gym and I'm walking and all this other stuff. And I am happy to report that tomorrow I'm leaving for a lengthy vacation. The point here is these are not unproductive interruptions. They are where I, as a creative person, do my work. So much time I'm spending reading, it leads to so much in my work. That's the key. The final quote from the book Rest is this: we shouldn't regard rest as a mere physical necessity to be satisfied grudgingly. We should see it as an opportunity. When we stop and rest properly, we're not paying tax on creativity or paying a tax on creativity. We're investing in creativity. See, we have to completely reframe rest. And I will tell you that before I was awakened to all of this about the importance of rest, self-care, I thought of rest as it's like, okay, my physical body needs some sleep and I'm going to make sure it gets that. And then I'm going to work my butt off until I can't, work anymore. And then I'll be exhausted. And I might at the end of the day go in and spend some time with my wife. And I might at the end of the day, have something for me to do that I enjoy, or I'm going to be exhausted and I just go to bed and I'll start it all over again. It's like, okay, and I have to sometimes, and I used to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to go to bed. I have to get sleep. And I will say today, it's like I look forward to sleeping at night. I look forward to my daily naps. I look forward to meditations. I look forward to going to the gym. I look forward to reading and studying. I look forward to all of this stuff that doesn't appear to be work. However, I see my rest is where I gain all of my access to my creativity that actually invests in the power and effectiveness of the actual time that I spend in doing what many people would actually call work. I love it. All right. I told you that I was reading a book called How to Relax by Thich Nhat Hanh. And this is one of the quotes from that book. It says, "A lazy day is a chance to train ourselves not to be afraid of doing nothing." You might think that not doing anything is a waste of time, but that's not true. Your time is first of all for you to be alive, to be peace. I love that. I had GBT come up with a list of questions that might inspire me to share some of my things here. Real quickly, what does rest mean to you? And how has your understanding evolved? I feel like I've adequately shared that in the reflections of these quotes. Can you share a personal story of a time when you realized the importance of rest in your life? I feel like that was the first whole half of this episode. How do you integrate rest into your daily routine? Here's what I do. I go to bed usually right around 7:30 to 8 p.m. at night. I don't every night. Sometimes I'm in bed at 9:30, 10:30, and occasionally as late as, 10:30 would be about the latest. However, most nights I look forward to getting a great night's sleep, and in my best ideal world, I head up to bed at 7:30, and by 8 or 8:30, I'm sleeping. I'm off to slumberland. I'm having dream therapy. I'm having all sorts of wonderful things happening inside of my body, and I love sleeping consciousness. It is amazing. So much recharge. I typically wake up Monday through Friday, 4 a.m., and I've recently shifted to where those first 4 hours of the day, I used to go to the gym, sit in the back parking lot, and I realized, well, I want to do creative work. My reading and journaling and studying, so much of that, I want an internet access that allows me to do some things, to log the things that I'm doing. And I was burning through my bandwidth in the back parking lot of the gym. So I changed things to where now for the first 4 hours of the day, I read, study, journal, meditate, pray, all of that right here at home, in my home office, in my studio. And then I take a nap, usually for about an hour. And then after my nap, I wake up and I go straight to the gym. I work out for at least 45 minutes. On the way home, I stop and grab myself lunch, or I come home and I will fix myself something here for lunch. And then after lunch, I will then come down, and I typically, if it's Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, I will have scheduled calls in those afternoons. And on Mondays and Fridays, I may actually work a second block of 4 hours in the afternoon on creative projects. That's what I do. And then after 5:30 p.m., I am done with my work, and I spend time with Stephanie. We will typically either sit down and read a book together or watch a show together. We'll go for a walk together. We'll go for a drive together. But we spend time together, and we're empty nesters except for right now during the summer. Our daughter is home from college until the fall semester starts. But as empty nesters, we like to go to bed early. So that is some of my favorite ways to rest. By the way, meditation is a huge practice for me. I use an app called the Insight Timer, and this app, I've been using it to track my meditations. I sometimes use it for silent meditation. Sometimes I use it for meditation with a timer with some sort of ambient music and or sound in the background. Occasionally, I use their hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of guided meditations. But what I can tell you is that today will be my 856th consecutive day of meditation, tracking it with this app. That's 856 days. 42,000.9 minutes of meditation. Meditation is one of my favorite ways to rest and recharge. All right. The next question is, how has prioritizing rest impacted your overall well-being and productivity? It's helped me have a greater sense of equanimity, which means that I still experience great joy and elation and super high highs. At the same time, I've also trained myself to enjoy the journey and the progress and the process of what I'm doing day to day and in the moment, as much as I do achieving a goal and seeing a dream fulfilled. So it's definitely helped me experience more equanimity on the upper side of things. I have a greater sense of consistent joy instead of having big, huge bouts up. And I also, as a result of equanimity, have noticed that rest and meditation has drastically reduced the drops in my emotional state, the anxiety, the fear, the worry. I'm not saying that I don't have those, and I'm not saying I don't sometimes get a little crazy overboard with celebrating something big. Yet what I can tell you is it's less of a roller coaster and it's more of a kiddie ride through life. Yes. All right. What advice would you give to someone who struggles with feeling guilty about taking time to rest? I would encourage you to read this book called Rest: Why You Get More Done When You Work Less by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. And I would encourage you to consider working through a breathing exercise and meditation and some other things. I would encourage you to work with a coach who could help you find a way to reframe rest and break up with limiting beliefs that are holding you back from feeling guilty, that are causing you to feel guilty when you do have and create margin in your life. When you take time off, even in the midst when things seem like this is the worst time to take time for myself. Those are the most important times for you to take time for yourself. Anyway, so yeah. The next one, how do you protect your time from the demands and distractions of modern life? Sometimes I don't do that incredibly well. At other times, I protect it by blocking the time out, by prioritizing it, by putting it first in the day, by not checking what everybody else has in their mind about things where my focus and attention should be. So putting it first in the morning, sometimes it's a very helpful thing. And then can you share any practices or habits that have helped you? I think I've already done that. And so action items, here are some things. I would encourage you, if you do not already have a scheduled block of time each day for rest, or even multiple times for rest, by all means, go in and put in a 30-minute nap in your day. Seriously, think about it. A 30-minute nap every day. Put in a block of time for a 20 to 30-minute leisurely walk outside, or just to do a breathing exercise or anything like that. Take mindful breaks. Just go for a stretch, take a walk, meditate, practice deep breathing, all this other stuff, restorative practice. The naps, going for a walk, going for exercise. Are you exercising daily? These things, you know that you feel like you should do them. I don't encourage you to do them because you feel like you should do them. I encourage you to do them because you are beginning to hear and recognize these are where my creativity and the solutions to my problems are going to come from. And there's a lot of religious practices out there that recommend a weekly rest day, designating at least one day a week where you won't engage in any activity that you would deem as work. And there's a lot of value to having a rest day. And of course, if you haven't been on a vacation in the last 3 years, it's time to start planning your next vacation. Now, I'm going to leave you with one final quote. This is from a book called Be Still by Justin Malcolm. By the way, I've not read this book. There was a little YouTube video that I saw come up through my thing, and it just said something about be still. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. Be still. I like that topic. Clicked play, and then I heard this quote, and I love it. It says this: creating a balance doesn't mean dividing your time equally between action and stillness. It's about intuitively knowing when to speed up and when to slow down. It's about understanding when to work relentlessly towards your goals and when to sit back and reflect and let the universe guide you. I'd love to hear from you. What did you think about the format of this free-flowing, no outline type of episode? I'd genuinely love to hear from you. Also, what are you going to do to incorporate more rest in your life? Are you going to start taking naps? Are you going to start meditating more? Are you going to start going out for some walks? Are you going to put some scheduled blocks in the middle of your day? I want to hear what actions you might be taking as a result of hearing this episode today. In the show notes, my email address is going to be there, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. I am going to be on vacation all next week. I am not going to record an episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show next week. However, I do want to let you know that as soon as I get back from vacation, I have made some massive shifts to my schedule, my priorities, and all of those things that will allow more rest and more creativity blocks of time in my life. And yes, there will be more content for this and various other shows, more email newsletter content. It is going to be incredible. I can't wait to bring you more. I can't wait to hear from you about the format of this particular episode. Can you tell the difference of the way that I'm even noticing the difference in the way that I'm communicating, knowing that there's no video episode of this. There's no video element. I'm kind of feeling that. I like that. Also, I want to let you know the Next Level Mastermind group for those who are the kind of established entrepreneurs. You've already kind of figured out, you've been in business for, let's just say 6 to 18 months, or maybe even for the last 10 years. But you're at that place where you're consistently generating revenue and you know who your audience is, but you could definitely benefit from being in a relationship with a community of other business owners who understand the kind of decisions that you're facing every single day in your business, the risk that you have involved in owning your own business and being responsible for the income that comes in, maybe not just for yourself, maybe even for your team. But also, you would love to have a community of people who have all sorts of experience, education, skills, talents, and abilities, and experience, where they would all be willing to hear what's going on in your world, what goals you're going after, and they would be willing to hear what your obstacles are, or what it is that you're currently stuck on, or that you need insight on. And all of these people will bring all of that experience, that education, those skills, talents, abilities, and experience, and give it to you in finding solutions through what's called the mastermind principle. The fact is that when we all come together, we have a collective way of experiencing intelligence that is not available to us individually. What we can do collectively is it's a very metaphysical thing in some ways, but it is an incredible experience. If you would like to experience that, I would love to invite you to go to nextlevelmastermind.info, .info, it's not .com, nextlevelmastermind.info, link in the show notes as well. Apply for that today. We just had a few people who have finished their 1-year agreement in the group, and some of them have gone on. They're investing in some other things where they want to grow in some other areas of expertise. There's a few open seats, and I'm going to begin an incredible marketing campaign for this to fill that group back up. There are 5 of us in the group now, and we've got a room for 5 more people. And so if you want to get in, and also some new people just came in, so you won't be the only new person. So definitely go to nextlevelmastermind.info. I would love to journey with you. I'm in this group. I facilitate this group. It's a way for you to have direct access to me every single week, as well as these other people that I personally have curated to be an incredible, powerful mastermind group experience. And if you need time to think about what is this mastermind group, how does this work, what's this all about, check out that podcast I mentioned earlier in this episode. There's only 6 episodes. UpgradeYourPeerGroup.com. It's called Upgrade Your Peer Group, The Power of Mastermind Groups. Also, I want to let you know that I'm launching a brand new group coaching program on Tuesday, July 9th. This is for people who are aspiring entrepreneurs or early stage entrepreneurs. I'm doing a group coaching program for them every single week for 90 minutes, delivering some sort of incredible thing that is going to help you understand things that it takes to succeed in building and growing an online business. And also plenty of time for direct Q&A, ask me anything, on so many topics that are going to be relevant to those who are early stage or aspiring entrepreneurs. And quite frankly, there's going to be plenty of people who are my one-on-one coaching clients, who are in my Next Level Mastermind, who are already established entrepreneurs, who will also come in and ask questions, because it's an additional way that I give them at no extra charge to come into this program to ask some of their questions. It's kind of like access directly to me for kind of like a little one-on-one. Hey, Cliff, I'd love to pick your brain on this thing. Hey, what do you think about this? Can I get your thoughts on that? Do you know anybody that knows how to do this? This is going to be happening every week for early stage and aspiring entrepreneurs, but also if you're an established entrepreneur, it might be appealing to you as well. If you'd like to learn more about that, there's no sales page. You're going to have to email me. New business coaching group in the subject line. I'm not going to work on that until I get back. I have one of those things. I have a business model that I picked up the term for this from my friend Rich Litvin. He's the co-author of the book, The Prosperous Coach. He calls it the MSU business model. Been doing this my entire life. And I'm going to give you a clean, family-friendly version. It's called Making Stuff Up. And that's it. I have an idea. I go and I create it. I've already got some paid clients for it. Wonderful. Let's start this thing. And then I will figure out all of the details for how to market it to others down the road. So that's how I started the Next Level Coaching Program. And that's how I'm starting this. So that's all coming. There's lots of great stuff happening when I get back from vacation. But for me, I'm signing off. And until next time, I encourage you to take your rest to the next level.
Mindset and